Well, after two very exposition-heavy episodes, finally the plot is starting to get moving, but are we moving too quickly? Let's talk about it. Hey guys, Cameron for Preacher, Season 1, Episode 3, The Possibilities, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. The first two episodes have been fantastic. I think they really set the tone very well for the show, but this really was the first plot-heavy episode. This is when we start to see more of the direction we're headed. We're starting to see more of what's going to happen on the show, and that's something I definitely really did like. I will say, though, that this episode did feel more like a collection of scenes than one big coherent episode, and it wasn't a bad episode, but compared to the first two, it definitely was not up to par. Now, it did feel like Preacher, definitely. It still had that weird tone that Preacher has had throughout the entire show. It's just this episode felt a lot more, plot heavy than the other episodes have, and mainly it's because the other two have been establishing the worlds. By the way, guys, I'm not doing the whole, season 1 is, the first episode's called episode 0, I'm not doing that. I think that's really weird overall, so I'm just gonna do, this is episode 3. Let's just get into this episode, though. We start off with a woman. We see she's sitting smoking and talking about how some guy is like an animal, always stuffing himself like a pig. She tells Tulip what time he goes upstairs in the layout where she can find the safe, and Danny wants Tulip to kill her husband and make it look like a robbery, and Tulip says no. Danny asks her about Grail Industries, the document she got for her. Danny then takes the papers, reluctantly hands over a slip of paper, says it's the last known address, and we see a flashback to Tulip screaming while a car drives off past her, and she says it was the day it all turned bad for her and Jesse, and we're starting to get more clues of what happened between her and Jesse. We still don't fully know, but we're starting to get more clues, and she says someone's got to pay, and basically, there was obviously something that happened in that car. There definitely is more to it, but I like that we are slowly finding out more. I definitely did like that. But then we see, they are in Houston, a man screams for help, and chains rattle. Danny goes into a theater, a film is playing, and that's where the screams are coming from. Danny then hands something to a man, says her girl is good, he waves her off, and she leaves, and later he leaves. It was a snuff film festival, and the man puts on a hat, and walks out, all dressed in a cream-colored summer suit, and we don't know who this man is. We just know he's very mysterious, but I thought that was a very good way to start. But now let's talk about the thing that I think was really cool in this episode, which is the intro. I mean, this is the first episode that had a legit intro, and I will say it was kind of weird to watch an AMC show and didn't have an intro, because all of the AMC shows do have an intro. The intro of the show is badass. I think it totally fits the show. I love the little hidden the way they have each character. They have the little things for each character. Like for Jesse, they have the preacher. For Eugene, they have the gun, because of course that's when he shot himself in the face and tried to kill himself and everything. I think it's just a really well done opening credit sequence. Really good stuff. I'm glad that we got. I know a lot of people enjoyed the cut to this scene. Then we go to preacher, but I thought this was very well done. It was very well deserved, and I definitely really did love the opening titles overall. Of course, you guys saw some of the opening titles in my intro, because now I can actually use an intro and not just the same, thing from episode 1, so I think that's really cool they did that. Obviously, I wanted to address that. I thought that was really well done, though. I definitely really enjoyed that, and for me, probably one of the highlights of the episode was the intro. I thought it was really well done. I definitely really did appreciate that. Now, like I said, this episode was really good. I definitely really did like it, but I think the intro really did add to how great this show really is. So at the Sundara Motel, Fiore and DeBlanc tell the sheriff that something got loose and is in Anvil, and it's ended up there and they don't know why. I mean, if you remember in the promo, we heard them say, something got loose and it ended up here and we're not sure why. I thought that was very well done. And like I said, they're clearly trying to turn, the Sheriff Root against Jesse. And he says their work is dangerous, and if their mission fails, people will die. They tell him not to tell anyone, to leave them alone, and Sheriff Root asks if it's an escaped lunatic, and they tell him it is, and in a way, basically. So I'm pretty sure they're talking about Jesse, because the way we see Jesse in this episode, definitely he seems to be an escaped lunatic. We'll definitely talk about that, because a lot of this episode is Jesse embracing his power more, and we'll definitely get into that. But then we get this monologue. Now, I heard a lot of people say this monologue was very unnecessary, and that it didn't add anything to the episode. Here's the thing. We had that scene last week in we had that scene last week with the hangings and things like that back in the 1800s. That's eventually going to connect to something. And this monologue, while I feel like it doesn't connect right now, eventually it is going to connect to something. I feel like Preacher is one of those shows where they show you a bunch of different things, but it doesn't connect till later in the story. And I feel like this is definitely one of those things. He tells him a story about a kid who got lost at the theme park. They left their two older kids with a pretzel vendor while they went to look for him. He tells him that one kid was found naked, stuffed in a drainage ditch. He says the guy worked in the park park for 30 years selling pretzels, and they never found the other kid at all. He shakes his head and says, "This world," and then walks out. So we don't really know what that's about, if maybe we're gonna find this kid, or what's going on there. I mean, I feel like that story, there's definitely some importance to that story. What it is now, I don't really know, but definitely I think that's really interesting. DeBlanc then says they need to do something. Fiore talks about the coffee can. They wonder if it's still there. They agree to try again after dark, because obviously, you know, they hear about this coffee can. They have a ton of weapons to take with them, and so basically they are just going to do whatever they can, because they don't really know what they're facing, and I like the way that was done. Tracy's eyes then open as Jesse asks, but she's still catatonic, and as we know, Jesse used that very demonic voice with her, and Terry tells Emily about the incident with Jesse, and Donnie takes Chris outside, and Chris says he's sorry for going to the preacher. Donnie says whatever he thinks he hears through the walls, he's not hurting his mom, and he says he hurts her, but grown-ups are complicated. And if you remember, Chris was the kid that asked, Jesse to hurt his mom, to hurt his father and everything, and Donnie says that he loves her, and Chris nods. Chris asks about his dad, about Doogie, saying the preacher made him make a weird sound, and Chris says that he kicked Doogie's ass and made him cry, and Donnie says good. The bus driver has a bandaged face, and he doesn't recognize Jane, the girl he has the hots for, which is very interesting, the fact that he had a, face like that. And again, one of the things I do like is that everyone's pretty much starting to hear about what Jesse is capable of, and that Jesse did, in fact, rough up Doogie in the way he did. And another kid then jokes that Mr. Creepy Weirdo forgot about him. The kids all yell for Donnie to make the noise like a bunny. He's pissed. Cassidy didn't come, because obviously, this is something that he's doing now, is that he's making these noises, and Donnie is clearly kind of famous for it. And basically, he's pissed. Why did I say Doogie? Donnie. Cassidy then comes down to bang on the door of the church. He unlocks it, sees a coffin out front. He looks around. Now, I will say, Cassidy was great in this episode, but this definitely was the least badass episode for Cassidy. Now, he's still a badass character. I think he still has some awesome moments, but just compared to what he did in episode 1 and 2, here he was a bit, not underused is the word, but just not under, I think a bit underutilized, definitely. I don't think he was used to his fullest potential. I kind of want another kick-ass scene with him. We didn't really get in this episode. We get a lot more talking, and I'm fine with that. I mean, obviously, we need to slow things down a bit, but, I mean, we just didn't really get that big action scene that this episode kind of makes us think we're going to get. So Emily's there, asks what he's doing. She says delivery dropped the coffin off an hour ago and says that she was the one coughing. Emily asks if he's seen Jesse. She wants him to drive the van for her, but it's daylight still. She tells him where to find the keys, and he puts on a lady shirt he finds in the closet. He hears a creepy noise and goes to check. Jesse's in a chair and is conked out, and Cassidy asks if he's alright. Jesse sits up, says he wants to show him something. The weird noise is coming from Jesse, we find out, and that's exactly what they're trying to find, where this weird noise coming from. It's all from Jesse, and basically, he wants to show Cassidy his dark power, and that's one of the best scenes in this episode. We'll get into that in a second, but a state trooper is basically, I really like the way that was done. I definitely really did enjoy that. But then we get what is by far one of the most entertaining scene in this episode with the next scene. I really am loving Tulip's character. I think this episode shows why Tulip is such an awesome character. Just what she's able to do in this next scene, I absolutely love. A state trooper has pulled Tulip over. She's irritated. She tucks her gun under her leg, and you basically get the sense that she's just gonna kill this guy. She doesn't care. She slips on a military ring, hands over a license. He asks if she knows how fast she was going and says 115. He asks her name, Marnie, Pomerantz, and obviously, that's not really her name. And we know that it's her real name, actually, and that people just call her Tulip. And he says that she was reckless driving, and he has to arrest her and impound her car. She asks if she can get her coat and purse, and she says girls cry a lot in situations like these, but she won't. She says it doesn't work. She says it's sexist in a way. He asks when she served, and she says Canadar, and she says she flew Apaches. Then Tulip tells him that she has a friend who's going down a wrong road, and she tried to help beat sense into his head, but can't get through to him until today. Now, she's not wrong. We know she's talking about Jesse, obviously. Jesse's gone through the wrong path, she feels, and she really can't get through to him. And she says speeding is wrong, it's dangerous. She says she shouldn't say it, but she would break 100 laws if it kept this guy on track. He asks if the guy is worth it. She says she wishes he wasn't. She rests her hand close to her gun, but then the cop says slow down, hands back her license, and you get the sense that if he would not have handed back her license, she probably would have just blew his brains out right then and there. I mean, that's how awesome of a character Tulip really is, and it's also how savage she is. And he says if the guy knows what's good for him, he'll wait for her. She tears up a a little, then wipes them away. Her face gets cold again after he leaves her, and she peels out and speeds away. And the way that she's just able to act that way and make it seem like there's totally this huge situation going on, which there kind of is, just not as dire as Tulip made it seem, is awesome. I love seeing that. Really good stuff. And the way that Preacher's able to do that, I mean, Tulip is not at all an unlikable character. We understand why she had to do this. We understand why she had to get out of the situation. I thought that was definitely very well done. But then we get what I think was the most entertaining scene in this episode, which this is awesome because Jesse commands Cassidy to do several things. First of all, he tells him to hop and sing Johnny Cash. He does, and then he makes him tell a secret, which it turns out that Cassidy loves Justin Bieber. That was hilarious. I did not think that was going to come out, but that was really funny. Again, it just goes with how quirky and weird the show can really be. I mean, it's just a really random reveal, but he has him box faster and faster. Then he tells him to fly, and basically, Jesse, when he says you do something, you do it, and it's really crazy. Cassidy leaves and busts his face into a wall. Jesse apologizes, but Cassidy says it's awesome, and obviously Cassidy would think that's awesome. I think that was a really well done scene. I really like the way that was done, and the way that Jesse's starting to not really understand his powers, but now he's starting to realize that he has these powers, I think is really cool. At the Meme Power Company, Odin gets an envelope. He listens to the sounds of slaughter from the kill room as cows die. Cassidy tells Jesse he might be a Jedi or could be a brain tumor, and Cassidy says he's stoked. Jesse looks very worried because he doesn't really understand what's happening to him, and Cassidy asks how long he's had this power. Jesse says last night, and maybe longer. He says he feels different, and Cassidy asks for details. Jesse says it's like there's a big blender in his guts, and inside is everything from love to hate to fire and ice, and he doesn't really know how to control it all, you can definitely tell. And basically he says ice cream, tarantulas, everything, all of God's creation is inside him. So now we're getting the sense that I think because Jesse's such a bad preacher, now he's literally turning into God, and how does he use these powers, I think is really interesting, and I mean, it really is unlike nothing we've seen. I've heard a lot of people say, you know, the character of Preacher is something we've never seen, and you definitely do see that here, that Jesse has this supernatural power that makes him like God, and Cassie says Jesse in shock since the power came out of the blue, and it might feel like a curse, but it doesn't have to be, and Cassie says imagine the possibilities. Jesse seems very disturbed at the prospect, because I think while he sees, you know, this dark power inside him, at the same time, he's also kind of worried about what this could do. I mean, he has to be very careful what he could do here. He could end up killing someone, and he needs to be very careful with his choice of words, because when he commands someone to do something, it will actually happen. Like, if he says, kill yourself, they'll actually kill themselves, and it really is a very dangerous situation. I really did like the way that was done, and I think Dominic Cooper's doing a very good job with portraying this character. I'm really loving what they're doing with Jesse. Probably some of my favorite stuff in this entire episode, and my favorite stuff in the show so far really is Jesse's power. I'm really loving the way that's done. So on the TV, we see Tom Cruise's funeral. We're reminded that Tom Cruise died on this show, which again, I think is just hilarious and awesome. And really random, but again, it's just really funny. Fiore and DeBlanc are weaponed up. The lights flicker. Fiore says he's ready to go. Donnie is with Odin and reads him a letter about a business opportunity from Jerry Cutler. And Donnie offers to go kick the guy's ass. But Odin says, clear my tray. Donnie offers to get his assistant, but Odin says he'd do it. He struggles with one hand since his other arm is still in a sling. And he rattles it, tells Donnie never mind, then calls him a right-hand man with no right hand, and Cassie then bundles up in a hat and cloak, takes the coffin to the crematorium, burns a bike, grabs a box of ashes. Now, again, we know that, obviously, Fiore and DeBlanc are not dead, so who's in this body, we don't know. He sees a black SUV drive by, looks very concerned. Jesse is out in his truck singing along with the radio to a country song, and Tulip then pulls beside him, honking, and I'm like, finally, we're gonna get that Tulip Cassidy Jesse scene that I've been waiting for. He pulls over, she calls him partner, asks if he missed her, and we unfortunately do not get that scene that we've been waiting for. I was hoping we would, but we don't. Now, who's in this black SUV? We don't know. Unfortunately, I thought we were going to get a scene with Cassidy, but then we realized that this is a separate scene. Tulip then pulls up beside him, honking. He pulls over. She calls him partner and asks if he missed her. He asks for a smoke. She hands one over. She says Houston says hi. He asks her if he seems different to her, because really, he doesn't really understand the May is becoming, and she says he looks like shit, then asks why. He says something happened. She says she doesn't know what it means. He says he doesn't know either, and she says he's boring her, then says she talked to Danny. He says he's done with that life, and he doesn't want it. He doesn't want to have to do, you know, these terrible, he doesn't want to go down this dark path, even though she wants him to. He refuses, and Tulip asks why he's doing this. He said he made a promise to go on the good guys. She scoffs. He says it's not a joke to him. He says he has to save the town and says he owes it to God, and she mocks him more, and he snaps at her. He says, go back to your life for crime. She holds up a piece of paper and says, "This is justice, not crime," and he says, "Carlos," and we flash back to a dead guard with a bullet hole in his head, Jesse with a gun in the car driving away. Jesse looks at the paper and she says, "Last known address," and she says there is no such thing as a good guy. She says his dad is dead and this town is past saving, and I like the way she looks at it. There really is no such thing as a good guy and a bad guy. There are only bad guys who are better than others, she kind of sees it as. So she says, "Let's go kill Carlos." They leave the truck and U-turn out of town atop Svi in her car, and I didn't fully understand the whole Carlos situation. This was the one thing I didn't love about the episode, was Carlos as a character. I don't really understand why they had to kill him. I mean, I kind of understand, but I don't at the same time. So Fiore and DeBlanc then check their massive bags of weapons. They have their helmets on. They talk about taking the can first, then the preacher, and Cassidy runs over them with the van. He says, "Nice try." He says he doesn't know how they keep finding him, and he says, "You need to drive a different car," then looks at their faces. He says, and of course, he's wondering, he killed them, he's saying, "I killed you," then decides that they're clones and curses. He says now he has to clean up all over again and walks off mumbling because he was convinced that he killed them and he didn't. And the fact that he didn't, I love that he didn't really, feel much about it. He was just like, "Alright, you're clones." I think that's just hilarious. And they tell him that they're not there for him, but for the preacher. That's why they're there. And they tell him that he has something of theirs and they need to put it back. I thought that was a very well done scene. I like seeing this idea of Fiore, DeBlanc, and Cassidy possibly teaming up. But will Cassidy really turn against the preacher? I don't really know. We'll have to see how that's going to go, and I think that definitely is very interesting. So Tulip then tells Jesse that they should take a hammer and break every bone in Carlos's body, then soak him in battery acid. She asks if he wants Frios and goes inside the store. A guy honks at Tulip, wants her out of the way. Jesse tries to tell her a secret, but she's arguing with the guy who gives up, drives away honking. He doesn't get a chance to tell her anything that he wants to, because obviously he wants her to know about this dark power. He doesn't really understand either, and he wants her to know. So she comes back over, says, "What do I need to know?" Jesse says he needs to take a leak, walks off. Tulip says that's fascinating. He goes into the bathroom. Donnie is there with a gun. He followed him, says, "Hey, preacher." He asks who's the bunny in the bear trap now. He tells Jesse to turn around. Jesse turns and dries his hands. Donnie tells him to get on his knees. He does. Donnie says it's his turn to make a sound and laughs. Donnie says make a wee sound. Jesse glares. Donnie puts the gun to his head. Jesse says he won't squeal for him. Donnie says he'll die for him then. And Jesse says no. He says he'll make sure that when they find his body, it'll look like a suicide so no one knows he beat him like a bitch twice. And he uses command voice, makes him sit, put the gun in his mouth, pull back the hammer. Then he stops short of having him kill himself, and he's not going to kill Danny, obviously. He's not going to kill Donnie. He says drop the gun. Donnie does. Donnie's crying and he's terrified, obviously, because he has no idea really what's going on here, and just the way that he's doing everything that Jesse is telling him to do. Such a well done scene. But again, it doesn't really portray Jesse as a villain because he doesn't really understand what's going on. He doesn't know why he's doing all these things, and Jesse says he gets it. He tells Donnie he can go. He grabs his gun, runs out shaking, and obviously Donnie cannot even comprehend what the hell just happened. I mean, randomly this guy has all this power, telling him all this stuff he needs to do, and he doesn't really understand any of it. So Tulip sees Donnie, says hi. He gets into his car without speaking, speeds away. Jesse comes out. She asks what they were up to in there, and Jesse says he changed his mind. She says that they should let Carlos get away with it, and he says leave Carlos to God, and that's the best thing to do, that they should leave Carlos to God. They don't want to kill him, and I think Jesse as well, he doesn't want to kill Carlos because he doesn't know what he's capable of, and I think that's the real reason why. So he says he's staying, walks away. Tulip says she won't leave without him. He says suit yourself. Cassidy asks why, and obviously, so, Tulip says she won't leave without him, but he clearly is going on his own path because he doesn't really want to face this darkness. Now, it is something I think eventually he's going to have to do, but right now, at least, he's trying to conceal it. He's trying to hide it. He doesn't want Tulip to know about it because, again, I feel like he just feels like he's scaring himself, and he doesn't really want anyone to know. So Cassidy obviously wants to know, what DeBlanc and Fiore's deal is. He asks why they want the power inside Jesse, and we find out that's what they want. They want the power inside him. DeBlanc says they don't want to use it. He wants to put it in the coffee can, and he asks who they are. They tell him the government, but then Fiore says that they're from heaven, and Cassidy says stop coming at Jesse like this or he'll kill them. He offers to be their middleman and bring Jesse the deal. So you kind of get the sense that Cassidy is going to turn against Jesse, but also we know how much he trusts Jesse, and we know how much that Jesse trusts him. So Eugene and his dad then sit talking at dinner. He asks his dad if he heard Tracy open her eyes if a preacher prayed with her. He says maybe he can visit her, but his dad says stay away from her family or they will kill him. And again, we know the way Eugene is looked at. Eugene is just looked at as Arseface, that this guy that just shot himself in the face and shouldn't be alive, and things just aren't really going well for him. Eugene, I don't really think had nearly as much as he should have had to do in this episode, but he really did not have enough to do here. Ruthin said it's a monster swamp out there, talks about escaped lunatics, and obviously, you know, this is a very corrupted town with a lot of lunatics, and Jesse then presides at Ted's funeral, but only Emily is there with him. We see the graveyard with its odd collection of markers, including Jesse's dad, John Custer, that shows he died in 1990. Jesse talks about the dead rising, then a gas valve snaps open nearby to release fumes. We don't know what this means, but that is how the episode ends overall. Really good stuff. Let's get into this episode. So overall, while I do think this was the weakest of the 3 episodes, this still was a great episode. I really love what this episode did. I thought we had some really good expanding of what's going on here, especially with Jesse's power. The fact that he doesn't want to tell Tulip is really fascinating, especially the fact that it seems like he trusts Tulip so much. Well, we can tell he doesn't really trust Tulip, but eventually I think Tulip's going to find out. She's going to find out what's going on. She's definitely very smart, and I think at sometimes she's definitely ahead of him. So I really do think Tulip's going to figure out something is definitely going on. Maybe not exactly what's going on, but I think she's definitely going to know something is going on there without a doubt. I mean, obviously he's acting very shady. Something is just off, and I don't think it's going to take long for Tulip to realize really what's going on there. Definitely that's going to be very interesting. Cassidy. Is Cassidy really going to work with Fiore and DeBlanc? You don't really know. The fact that they want Jesse's power, I think is really interesting. The fact that they want to put in that coffee can, that they're apparently gods from heaven, I think overall is really interesting. The way that that's going to go, I'm looking forward to. Emily and Eugene are 2 characters that I don't really think they're utilizing as well as they should. Emily right now is just someone that is trying to help Jesse with the church, while Eugene seems to be a character that just has conversations, and I hope we get more besides that. I'm sure we will, but this episode is definitely more slower than the first 2. Now this episode was bad, it was just a bit slower, which I don't think was necessarily a bad thing. As far as that whole monologue that Sheriff Root said, like I said, I think that's eventually going to be of relevance. I don't know when exactly, but I feel like at some point that is going to be very important, and it is going to contribute a lot to the story. I just don't really know what it's going to contribute yet, what role it all plays. That stuff I don't really know yet. Donnie, I mean, that was a crazy scene what happened with Donnie, and the way he's realizing he doesn't really want to kill. Donnie's going to die eventually, but now is not the time for him to die, because Jesse doesn't really understand his power. He doesn't understand the extent of what he can do, and I think, honestly, he's really kind of terrified himself of how he can do all this stuff. I mean, imagine you're a normal preacher, you're not that great, all of a sudden you have all these powers of God, and anything you tell people to do, they just do it. I mean, it really is just insane the way he's able to do that, and I love the way that was done. Really good stuff there. I like all this talk of Danny and how Danny's reputation is kind of ruined. A lot of people see him as this, you know, pussy who finally, you know, who squeals like a pig and things like that. And I think it's really interesting the way that's done. I really am loving the way that they're portraying, you know, Donnie's character. You can tell that Donnie really wants to be treated normally, and he's not being treated normally at all. So I think that situation's very interesting as well. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to go. And then as far as Tulip, like I said, Tulip's eventually going to get through to Jesse. I definitely think that's going to happen, and I hope that happens very soon. What's going on with this gas valve? What does that have to do with Jesse? I'm not really sure. We're going next week. Next week's episode looks great. I just don't really know where we're headed. But and also, you know, Cassidy, is he really going to work with Fiore and DeBlanc, or is he going to have a completely different deal? I feel like he's going to do his own thing. We'll have to see, though. But guys, so much guys saw this episode. Really loving the show overall, as you guys know. I think this was another really great episode. Even though it was the weakest of the 3, I still really did enjoy it. And I will see you guys next week, which will be for Penny Dreadful, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.